welcome to the S.O.A.P study series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. We have come to the end of the book of Leviticus.
Woo! Yeah.
The last two chapters. It's a really good book.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I would say, one of the most underappreciated books.
I agree with that 100%, and I agree with one of the chapters today being an awesome chapter, too.
It's one of your favorite chapters in the book, isn't it? If not the favorite.
It actually was, yeah. All right, so last week, right? So last week we talked about the 7 holy assemblies, and these were really when the nation of Israel needed to get together as a nation.
So they're called the feasts of Israel or the festivals or whatever.
Yeah, and they're all for representing different things too.
Yeah.
But kind of, it's cool, right? And these were ordained by God.
Yeah.
And we also learned that the land needed a Sabbath, and something that we found out was called a Jubilee year too, which was kind of cool. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, well, look at
rewind
look at last week's
How
video.
did you get to this one without
Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about chapter 26.
All right, 26 and 27 finishes the book.
Yeah, so here's the cool thing with chapter 26. Chapters 1 through 25 are all the rules, right? The statute, what we call the laws, and we saw that they were logically laid out, all that kind of fun stuff. In chapter 26, God says, "Here's what I'm going to give you if you follow the rules." Mm-hmm. There's some awesome stuff in there, and it's worthwhile taking a review of what's in there.
Yep. And
then he says, "But." And this is the way it went, right? But if you don't follow my rules, here's what's going to happen. Yeah. And that here's what's going to happen is actually a microcosmic of the Old Testament, right? In a half a chapter.
Because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And it's not just, I'm not going to do the good stuff. It is, I'm not going to do the good stuff, and here's the bad stuff that goes along with it, right?
Yeah, so I really liked it from that kind of standpoint, and that's why I like that. That's why I like this.
So 26. A couple of things here. So this type of basically what we see in chapter 26 actually is repeated a couple other times in the Old Testament. Yeah. So this is the generation that just came out of Egypt, right?
Right.
They're at Mount Sinai. And they haven't done their 40 years of wandering. They're ready, in a couple of weeks, they're supposed to take the land and everything's going to be fine, right? Of course, they disobey and there's all of that stuff. So after the 40 years of wandering, now we have a second generation of Israelites,
right?
Most of whom were born outside of Egypt. They did not see the Red Sea. They did not see the plagues. They did not see all of that stuff that was tied with Egypt. All they know is wandering around the desert.
That's our life, yeah.
So in Deuteronomy, Moses has to basically go through the whole thing. In fact, the word Deuteronomy means second law. It's the second giving of the law. And he has to do this all over again. So in chapters 27, 28, 29, we have basically the same thing in a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
Your parents didn't obey, so maybe you need to hear this in more detail.
Yeah.
Fast forward about 500 years, and we have Solomon. For 2 Chronicles, everybody likes to go to 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, etc. Well, 2 Chronicles 6 is Solomon reviewing all this stuff. He says, I know we're not perfect, but and you've said that if we do this, you will do this. But if we repent, you'll bless us, right? And chapter 7 is God responding to Solomon's prayer. If my people who are called by my... This is very Jewish. This is about the nation of Israel. These are not promises that we can claim in the church today or in the United States of America or wherever you're watching from. This is for the nation of Israel, and it's part of the Old Covenant, which ended with the cross.
Yeah.
So it's done.
I love the standpoint where we're reading here in Leviticus. These people are not even involved in it, right? Because they're going to be wandering in the desert for 40 years. So they're like not even part of it, which is wild to think about it that way.
They miss out on all of the stuff that God has said, this is what I want to do with you, for you, through you, in you. Yeah. And they completely miss it.
Yeah.
Because of their call it rebellion, disobedience, whatever. Right?
Yeah. So I do want to review some of the good things that were in there. So these, if they did follow, here's what was going to happen. First one was rain. And you're like, That's it.
I don't like
rain. Yeah, right, right. But if you think about it, especially after 40 years of wandering around in a desert, rain is so important.
Yeah.
But it can extend a growing season.
Yeah.
It can mean the difference between fast or famine and a feast.
Yep.
There's some awesome things in there.
Yep.
And we in the United States certainly take it for granted. Rain, especially here in the Midwest, sometimes it's too much rain.
Yeah.
But you can count on rain, happening, and we have these huge fields that are always full of food, and magically we just go to a store and buy our stuff.
Yeah.
If it doesn't rain, that doesn't happen.
It doesn't. Yeah, and it has to come from somewhere.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So God being reliable there. And then the next one was to be able to sleep without being terrified.
Yeah.
I've certainly had, dreams before, nightmares,
Yeah.
and, have been terrified.
But you don't live in terror.
Yeah, exactly. So wild animals, wild people.
Yeah.
Enemies coming in.
Yeah.
So God is saying, if I'm on your side, we're getting rid of all the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I'm with you and you're with me.
Yep.
And then probably the best one, God walking around with his people.
Yeah.
So imagine being in Jerusalem with the temple, and God's literally there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's always
wild
been
is
his. That's always been his goal, is his presence with humans, right?
Right.
Adam and Eve, that was his goal. Enoch walked with God. When Cain sinned, killed his brother Abel, and God says, I'm going to banish you. He said, if you banish me from your presence, the presence was the big thing.
Right.
Noah walked with God. And keep on going. The title that Jesus is going to carry is Emmanuel, which is Hebrew, God with us. And it goes all the way to the book of the Revelation, when finally we're in the eternal state. God will be with people.
Right.
That's always what he's wanted. And we've been messing it up literally since page 3.
Some of us have it. Yeah, exactly. Right. Page 3.
I mean, it's
Chapter 3.
Yeah, chapter 3 from the very beginning. And he keeps working back. Of course, we have the Holy Spirit who lives in us now, and that's his presence with us. But one day we'll actually be able to see him face to face, and the whole thing. So
Yeah. So that was the good side, right? Now the bad side is here's what's going to happen,
Yep.
and again we won't go through it all, but it's what the Old Testament is.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the things that he brings out is that Israel is going to be removed from the land.
Yep.
The amount of times that they have missed the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to find
the land Sabbath.
Yeah, the land Sabbath.
Yeah, not the weekly Sabbath,
right,
because that would be a problem.
Yeah.
They'll
Yeah.
never be
where they grew for 6 years
Yeah.
and they let their land rest for the 7th year.
Right.
Let's skip a couple of those, right?
Yeah.
Because it seems like a good idea. So they skipped a bunch of them, and God's like,
70.
I need these.
They skipped 70 of those land Sabbaths, which is why they needed to go into exile for 70 years. Babylon, Persia, Assyria, all of that before they could come back.
Right. Wild,
Yeah.
isn't it? But also, God's given a reason.
Yeah.
Right? And I want these. I asked for them. You ignored them.
Yep.
There's a problem there.
Yeah, this isn't, because I said so. This isn't, anything like that. He's like,
he laid it out.
I've told you what it's,
And he didn't have to.
Yeah.
Right? As God,
right. He could have
He's
said,
not
because
required.
I told you, right? Yeah.
Okay, so then we get into chapter 27.
Yeah.
Last chapter. And it's all about vows.
Yeah.
In there. So, I mean, I've certainly made vows to God before. I will never, whatever it is. I will
Never
always.
say never, right?
Yeah.
Never say always.
And then when the test came, I generally flunked.
Yeah.
Right? So what's this about? Or what are these vows?
These are free will vows. These are, a couple of examples, okay? So Hannah in 1 Samuel. Hannah's not able to have children, so she goes to the tent of meeting there, the tabernacle, and she prays and she says, if you will give me a son, I will give him back to you. Okay, that's a free will vow. It's not required. It's not mandatory. Nobody's forcing anything. A sort of a bad example would be Jephthah, the judge. Okay, he says, God, if you let me win this, war, this bad battle, when I get home, the first person who walks out of my house, I'm going to offer to you. Happens to be his only daughter, but and this shows how far Israel was away from God.
So he ended up killing her.
He ended up killing her, sacrificing her, because he did not know the law well enough to know that there was a monetary
redemption.
Redemption that he could have paid to the tabernacle that would have redeemed her, and he didn't have to kill her.
Right.
So in his case, he killed her. In Hannah's case, Samuel, once he was weaned, he actually went to live at the tabernacle, and he was raised by the priest.
So that's the whole "Here I am."
Yeah.
Here I am, Lord.
Right.
Thing.
Right.
Eli.
Right. So what we have is, if a person is part of the vow, if an animal is part of the vow, if a house is part of the vow, you've got these little sections. It's, I am dedicating this to God. I'm dedicating this to God. And if it's a person or if it's an animal or whatever, it can be bought, and not bought like slavery or anything, but it can be redeemed with a payment, and it gives the whole price list, basically.
Yeah, so you'll see that in there, which is, it seems weird to us. But,
and it's based off of production value. It's based off of production value. How much is this person going to produce compared to, so it's based on age, it's based on gender, it's based on everything. The thing that I like is that a person is never worth nothing. It doesn't matter gender or age or anything. A person is never worth nothing. Yeah. And a person is always worth more than an animal. Right. So God codified into Israel's law, humans are more valuable than animals.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big deal.
It is, because we certainly haven't treated humans that way.
Yeah.
All the time.
And in some cases, there are groups, environmental groups and political groups that actually switch it around.
Yeah, the animal
is far more important than a human. We'll discard humans, but don't touch the animals. Right. That's not how God did it in the law here.
Right. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So I think that brings us to the end of Leviticus.
Yeah.
It was certainly a good book.
Yeah.
Good book to go through.
Yep. And just by way of reminder, these 27 chapters took roughly a month from what I can tell. They're at Mount Sinai, and over the course of about a month, these things were laid out. It doesn't really take much time, and we've taken more time to read through it than it took for God to give it to in the first place. Right. So hopefully over the course of our 8 weeks together, our 8 sessions together, you've come to appreciate the book more than maybe you thought you were going to. Some things that you were reminded of, that you made some connections to other parts of the Bible. You're like, oh, I didn't know that was in Leviticus. So now you know. And hopefully you enjoyed it, and just come away with an appreciation, a little bit more of an appreciation for God, for what he cares about, even though we're not under this law code, right? Yep. We're not bound to this, but it's the same God that we worship who gave this. So let's not miss God's character in here, and hopefully you picked up on some of that. As always, if you have questions or comments, we love to hear those. We love seeing the comments that come through on YouTube and other channels. So send those in. We always read them and try to respond to you. And we'll be back next time with a brand new book. So stay tuned.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.